Hey guys, no really, I read What Happened by Hillary Clinton. I finished reading it last night. I couldn't put it down for days. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this unusually interesting book. Now, you all know at this point that I'm red-pilled, and before I jump into any of that obvious, easy Clinton bashing stuff that a bunch of YouTubers have already done, some of them quite well, I just wanted to say a couple of things about Hillary Clinton, and first of all, I wish that I had seen this side of her in her campaign, in the sense that the book, people say it was ghostwritten and all that, and that's the exact opposite impression that I got. I got a feeling that this was really someone opening up their heart. That she was really exposing herself here. That it was actually deeply candid. I guess candid is the word. And I actually started to feel some sympathy for her, as strange as that sounds, because, you know, even politicians I like, I don't really feel much sympathy for. But I actually saw a very, you know, kind of touching human side. But a lot of that goes back to just the pathology of this person. And just her distorted perceptions, which come through so clearly in her own voice on the page. When I say that there were things about her in the book that I would have hoped that she had brought up in her campaign, I'm not talking about policy stuff. That's exactly not what I'm talking about, even though she keeps harping on the book that, you know, it's what worked in the 90s and it's what worked in the early 2000s, that people wanted to hear about policy and all this, but everyone's dumber and the voters are all dumber now and all they want is personal attacks and all that shit. I'm not talking about any of that stuff that she goes into great length in this book to give it substance, where she just talks on and on about her policies, which aren't even that specific, even in comparison to Bernie's and Trump's and all that. But she mentions living in a house separate from her husband, Bill, and being separated from him. And why didn't she bring that up in the campaign? If she had presented herself as a ruthlessly independent woman, maybe she's celibate, maybe she has other men, maybe she has women. But as long as there was that human element to her, she laughed about how, you know, how you have to appear dignified in public and you have to really keep a somber presence and you need to be focused on issues and all this all the time, when her husband was a shining example of someone who was, hey, just a guy, just some guy that you would see at a county fair or sit down and have a beer with. Like, he just seemed like a very nice, open individual. You'd see him going to county fairs and stuff and looking at enormous pumpkins. Oh well, but I wish she had talked more about being separated from Bill and more about her maybe romantic life apart from him. Maybe there were other people along the way that she fell in love with. But she talks about Bill as more than just a political colleague, friend, counterpart, partner, I guess. But she talks about him with very saccharine statements of love and declarations of love, which kind of hides what I guess the world already knows about Hillary Clinton, is that she's quite angry and aggressive. And going back over, just before this video, I just went over all of my highlighted parts in the book, which took a long time because I was highlighting a lot of it, and I was really just captivated by what she was saying. You know, I come up with so many expressions like, oh, it just makes my blood boil. Or I just got so mad when I was talking to so-and-so voter who said that they didn't vote for me for whatever reason, or they forgot to, or they regret not voting for me, or whatever. The anger with which she talks about Comey. She goes on and on for like 50 pages about Comey. And then she talks about Bernie, of course. Oh, Bernie, not just Bernie, but the Bernie bros. She points out how Bernie waited a month to endorse her and everything. Conveniently living out the fact that during the primaries in a lot of contested areas, she won over coin flips, 6 in total, which she all won. Like, I don't know the odds. I'm not really a math guy, but I think it's very unlikely to win 6 coin tosses in a row. But of course, it being her autobiography, I guess, her life, really, her life, which in her own sentiments kind of ended with the end of the presidential campaign, to where she's just in the woods drinking Chardonnay now. Like, this whole story kind of, it's a release of her identity, a release of her doubt, and finally a release of just all this pent-up anger and frustration, and she just lets it go. And a lot of the rumors that we heard from her staff and campaign people, that she was very belligerent and angry, and Bill was often screamed at. You know, I think we find plenty of evidence for that in this book. I had said in an earlier video on this roof that I thought maybe she had a drinking problem, and this book only kind of makes me suspect that even more, because she mentions drinking like 6 or 7 times, maybe more than that. You know, I lost count. I was just going through. I got like half through with my notes, and she mentions red wine, white wine, Chardonnay especially, that she likes, beer. On election night, she took a nap, and she said that they all had whiskey, which, again, I think like that's probably explains why she didn't appear on stage and all that. She talks about sampling vodka. Like, she's an international connoisseur of alcohol, and she uses expressions like raise a glass a lot and all that. And I think that maybe if she were a little more open about that, just like if she were a little more open about her personal life, like, she would be more likable to the people. So, I mean, I'm getting more and more critical as I go on, but that's part of what made the book so interesting. And I'm one of like only 5 people on the planet who read it, but I thought it was actually just, I couldn't put it down. It was just like a case study in this fascinating person, and how she doesn't get the fact that oh, she travels around the world and she has private concerts on islands with Bruce Springsteen and Paul McCartney and Lady Gaga and all this, and she's like, I don't know, I don't connect with people when I go out to coal mines in West Virginia and in Ohio. I don't know why Trump has an easier time. He's supposed to be the New York billionaire guy. And of course, you know, she just brushes things under the rug. She doesn't talk about any of the DNC scandals or anything, which I guess is appropriate because this book is about the election. But her life is a major part of the election, and the fact that her private life was kind of kept private is a major reason, I believe now, a major reason why she lost the election. Whereas Trump, for as much of an asshole as he is, like, he is, we know the details and he's spelled them out, and he doesn't sit on a cloud pretending to be a saint, because we don't want that to lead us in these crooked times. Crooked times. Indeed. Let's keep going. She said one thing that bothered me, because I'm kind of an art geek, kind of an art aficionado, and I love older paintings, you know, but especially the really modern stuff. I'm a huge fan of Jackson Pollock and Mondrian and Mark Rothko, and she talks about going to a Mark Rothko visit on, I don't know if it was her first or second date or whatever with Bill, and just giggling and being so happy and enraptured and in love with him at this Mark Rothko exhibit, while being totally oblivious to what Mark Rothko was painting. Because anyone who knows who this man was, and the sad outcome of his life, and the dark subtext beneath his paintings, anyone who's really looked at a Rothko painting and embraced it and really felt it, you know, even if they were with someone, it would be more of a somber love. I don't know. That's picky. That's incredibly picky, and that's incredibly nerdy on my part to pick that out when there are so many good parts to this book without talking about her, you know, her lack of art standards. But, okay, we can tie it back to the fact that she didn't really connect to people, where it seemed like a lot of her emotions were just manufactured. And she kept dropping terms that were already kind of getting old 6 months ago, like manspreading and bromance, and words like this, where she just tries desperately, tries to sound natural. It seems so forced every time. It's just like, you know that clip on YouTube where she's with these black radio hosts. I don't know what radio show it was, but they ask her what she always has, and she's like, hot sauce, and she pulls it out. Are you pandering to black people? Is it working? You know, like my Hillary impression? I was thinking of being Hillary for Halloween, but I don't. I can't look like Hillary, I don't think. Where would I even begin? I don't know if they have pantsuits here. I could probably go to like get one of those communist uniforms that they have. Where was I going? Okay, she talks about her emails a lot. She even has a whole chapter called Those Damn Emails, and she kind of hides behind Bernie Sanders as saying, well, forget about the damn emails. But she just keeps saying it was okay for me to do it, and to quote Hillary, I shouldn't have assumed it was okay for me to do it. And this is one of the mistakes that you'll read about in this book. And she talks a lot about the emails without really mentioning what was deleted. She claims it's all just ordinary, like, text message length stuff about family and all that. She doesn't talk about the Clinton Foundation in any detail or anything. She doesn't talk about a lot of the scandals, which I guess she's trying to show her side of the story, and maybe that stuff didn't register. But in the end, we get a pretty complete revision of the 2016 election, and it was very interesting for me to walk down that and to relive it again, just as I relived it through a completely opposite perspective in Dangerous by Milo. And coming to the end of it, it really kind of reminded me that just because you're famous and powerful and successful doesn't mean that you're in any way self-aware. And maybe things like that can work against you. Maybe it can make it easier to obscure parts of yourself. She keeps saying, she mentions over and over in the book, I take full responsibility because I know that I did things wrong. But for everything she does wrong, she gives a long explanation of how it really wasn't her fault. And so she deflects all the blame while taking the blame. And I saw this, there was a clip of her talking about the book. I forget which one exactly, but she's saying, someone asked her, so what do you think, I mean, apart from external factors, Russia, she talks about Russia a lot, of course, almost schizoid talking about Russia, but, you know, apart from Russia, apart from Comey, apart from all that, like, what responsibility do you take? And she would say and she said something like, well, I shouldn't have used the emails that way, but other politicians were doing it, and blah, 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 blah. And she just keeps wrapping around it. And one great answer that she gives, she says, you know, I take responsibility for this. There are many reasons why my campaign failed. I wrote an entire book about it. As if writing the book about the excuses exonerates her in some way. But one of my last points here is that throughout the book she has moments of just pain, of just crying into her pillow and everything, that actually became very human for me. And reading them, I actually saw a side to this person that I had never seen before, which made it just really, really interesting. Even though, of course, I still don't like her, I can still respect her and be interested in her as a human being. But in the end of all the books I've read, it kind of reminds me of Where's Waldo, if you remember that book. But it was Where's Wally in other parts of the world. But in those books, you had a picture of hundreds and hundreds of people in a setting doing lots and lots of different things, and you're trying to find one guy, Waldo, and you're trying to find him. And so you stare at the picture until you find Waldo. And what happened is kind of like one of those books, you know, Where's Hillary? Where's Hildo? Hilldog? I don't know. And she's done a great job with these different scenes. You've got the DNC convention. You've got the you've got Roosevelt Island. You've got the White House. You've got Arkansas. You've got Iowa. You've got all these great places. You've got international scenes, and she's filled them with all kinds of different people. Very detailed drawings, hundreds and hundreds of people. And then she sits there and looks at her drawing, her complicated drawing, and she says to herself, well, I'm not in the picture, so it couldn't have been me. But she's the one doing all of the art. Anyway, probably not my strongest idea. But if you're insane like I am, then I give this book 2 thumbs up.